What if the blessing you've been praying for is already on the way, but one invisible habit is quietly blocking it? God has not forgotten you. Heaven has not ignored your tears. In the spiritual realm, your breakthrough is closer than you think. But many believers delay their miracles without realizing it. Negative words, silent doubt, and hidden fear become walls that stop divine favor from flowing freely. Today is not a message of fear, it is a divine warning filled with hope, because the moment you break that habit, your blessing won't just come, it will accelerate. Let me share something very important with you, because this is where many sincere believers misunderstand how blessings actually work. Faith does not merely wait for God to move. Faith moves first. From a spiritual and psychological perspective, faith is a posture of the mind before it ever becomes a result in your life. Many people think faith is simply believing that God can do something, but real faith is living as if God already has. That is a very different mental framework. When God speaks a promise over your life, it exists first in the invisible realm. It is real there before it ever becomes visible here. The role of faith is to create a bridge between these two worlds. If that bridge is weak, incomplete, or filled with doubt, the blessing remains delayed, not because God is slow, but because the human mind is not aligned with the divine truth. From a psychological standpoint, your faith shapes your expectations, and your expectations shape your behavior. A person who truly believes that God is preparing something good for them thinks differently, speaks differently, and acts differently. They walk with a quiet confidence that changes their decisions. They do not sabotage opportunities. They do not cling to fear. They do not talk themselves out of progress. This is not mystical. This is practical, mental, and spiritual alignment. Now let me say something that may challenge you. Blessings are not activated by need. They are activated by agreement. God does not respond to desperation the way He responds to faith. Faith is agreement with God's perspective, not emotional begging. When your inner world is aligned with His word, your outer world begins to reorganize itself around that truth. That is why habits like negative thinking, constant fear, and complaining speech are so destructive. They are not just bad attitudes, they are spiritual and psychological contradictions. You are asking God for abundance while rehearsing lack. You are praying for open doors while constantly expecting failure. That inner conflict creates spiritual resistance, not from God, but within your own soul. Dr. Cho often taught that faith is like planting a seed in the soil of your heart, but a seed only grows when the environment supports it. If the soil is poisoned with doubt, bitterness, and fear, the seed cannot expand. Faith in this sense is not a passive idea, it is an active mental discipline. It is choosing every day to align your thoughts with God's promises rather than your present problems, philosophically speaking. Faith is your interpretation of reality. Two people can be in the same situation, but the one who sees it through faith experiences peace, clarity, and progress, while the one who sees it through fear experiences paralysis and confusion. Faith changes meaning, and meaning changes motion. That is how blessings begin to move toward you. So when we say faith activates blessings, we are saying this: your inner agreement with God's truth creates an environment where divine favor can legally and spiritually operate in your life. It gives God something to work with, not because He is weak, but because He honors the spiritual laws He designed. If you want your blessing to manifest, don't just pray louder, think deeper, speak wiser, and live as if the promise is already true. That is where activation begins. And here is the truth to take with you. Your blessing is not waiting on God, it is waiting on your inner alignment. Let's go deeper, because once your faith is activated, the next essential element is vision. And I want you to understand this clearly. Vision is not imagination, and it is not fantasy. Vision is the disciplined ability to see your future before it arrives. Many sincere believers fail not because they lack faith, but because they have no mental picture of what they are believing for. The mind cannot move toward what it cannot clearly see. Psychologically, your brain is wired to pursue images, not words. When you say, "I want to be blessed," that phrase is too abstract for the mind to organize around. But when you can see yourself free, stable, restored, and walking in purpose, your subconscious begins to align your behavior with that picture. This is not magical thinking. This is how the human mind was designed by God. Philosophically, you can think of vision as the architecture of the soul. It is the blueprint that shapes your choices. Without a blueprint, you may have energy, effort, and even prayer, but no direction. And energy without direction becomes confusion. Dr. Cho often taught that your future is created twice, first in your spirit and later in your physical world. Vision is the first creation. It is the invisible reality that gives birth to the visible. When you see your blessing clearly, your decisions begin to change quietly. You become more disciplined without forcing it. You become more courageous without announcing it. Your daily habits start serving your future instead of feeding your fear. Here is something very important. Vague prayer produces vague results. When you pray without vision, you pray emotionally but not strategically. You say, God bless me, but you have not defined what blessing looks like. The moment you define it, your faith becomes targeted instead of scattered. Vision brings specificity, and specificity creates momentum. From a psychological perspective, vision programs your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind works on what you focus on occasionally, but your subconscious works on what you visualize consistently. If you constantly see struggle, lack, and delay in your inner world, you unknowingly rehearse them until they become your normal. But if you rehearse peace, provision, healing, and success, your mind begins to search for pathways that lead there. Vision also protects you. When temptation, fear, or distraction comes, vision acts like a compass. You begin to ask yourself, does this serve the future I see? If the answer is no, you walk away not because of pressure, but because of clarity. Powerful people are not controlled by discipline alone. They are guided by vision. And here is the danger. If you do not create your vision intentionally, life will create one for you. Society, past trauma, family history, and fear will paint pictures in your mind that limit what you believe is possible. That is why God gives divine vision, to interrupt inherited limitations and give you permission to see beyond your past. When your vision becomes clear, your faith gains direction. Faith becomes a vehicle, and vision becomes the steering wheel. You can have a strong engine, but without direction, you will not reach the destination. So I say this to you plainly, do not live by hope alone. Builders' plans come before construction. Vision comes before manifestation. See your future with precision. Hold it with discipline and protect it with courage. And here is the thought to carry with you. You will never walk into what you are not willing to see. Now, if your faith is activated and your vision is clear, we must speak honestly about the real enemy that stops most people from receiving what God is already willing to give, destructive habits. This is not a light subject, because most spiritual delays are not caused by the absence of blessing, but by the presence of internal barriers. When we talk about habits, we are not just talking about visible actions. We are talking about mental patterns, emotional reflexes, and spiritual routines that run silently in the background of your life. A habit is simply a thought you have practiced so often it now feels like your personality. That is why it is so dangerous. You stop questioning it, you start defending it, and slowly it becomes the invisible wall between you and your breakthrough. Psychologically, the human brain is designed to conserve energy. It prefers familiar patterns, even if those patterns are harmful. That is why people stay in cycles of fear, self-doubt, and negative speech. It feels safe because it is known. Faith feels risky because it is new, but safety and stagnation are very close relatives. What feels comfortable is often what is quietly keeping you small. Many believers pray for open doors while reinforcing closed mindsets. They ask for divine favor while rehearsing failure. This inner contradiction does not offend God, but it does confuse your soul. You cannot move forward when your habits are programmed to pull you backward. This is not a lack of spirituality, it is a lack of awareness. Let me be direct here. Doubt is not just a feeling, it is a habit. Fear is not just an emotion, it is a practiced response. Negative self-talk is not humility, it is a trained behavior. Every time you repeat these patterns, you deepen their pathway in your mind. Neuroscience calls this wiring. Scripture calls it strongholds. Both are describing the same reality, something invisible that becomes powerful through repetition. Philosophically, habits are the chains of identity. You do not rise to the level of your intentions, you sink to the level of your training. That is why momentary inspiration cannot compete with lifelong patterns. If your habit trains you to expect loss, you will resist gain without even realizing it. If your habit trains you to expect rejection, you will sabotage acceptance. The habit that blocks most believers is not just sin, it is agreement with limitation. It is the quiet decision to accept less than what God promised because disappointment feels safer than hope. Hope exposes you again. Faith asks you to risk being wrong. But comfort asks you to stay locked in what you already understand, even if it is painful. Breaking a habit is not about willpower alone. It is about replacement. You do not fight darkness by shouting at it. You remove darkness by introducing light. You do not destroy old patterns by obsessing over them. You create new ones by practicing truth until truth feels natural. A new confession must replace old complaints. A new thought pattern must replace old fears. A new spiritual rhythm must replace old emotional chaos. Here is the deeper truth. God can forgive in a moment, but transformation is often a process. Miracles can be instant, but mindset change is trained. Grace gives you access, but discipline gives you sustainability. That is why some people receive blessings but cannot keep them. The blessing arrives, but the habit remains unchanged. So when we say, this habit must end, we are not saying God is angry with you. We are saying God is ready to move you. He is not resisting your future. He is inviting you to dismantle what no longer serves your destiny. And the message to leave with you is this: you cannot step into a new blessing while clinging to an old pattern. Let me take you into a principle that sounds simple, but is actually one of the most powerful spiritual and psychological laws governing your life. Your words are not just sounds, they are forces. They do not merely describe your world, they construct it. Most people talk casually, never realizing that speech is a form of daily programming. Every time you speak, you are giving instructions to your mind, to your emotions, and ultimately to your actions. Language is not neutral. It carries direction. It creates atmosphere. That is why Scripture says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. This is not poetry. It is a spiritual law and a psychological reality. From a psychological perspective, the brain treats repeated words as commands. When you continuously say, I can't, your mind stops searching for solutions. When you say, nothing ever works for me, your mind starts filtering opportunities out of your awareness. This is how your internal world quietly becomes your external experience. You do not just speak your feelings, you train your future. Now, philosophically, words are agreements. You are either agreeing with fear or agreeing with faith. There is no neutral language. Even silence can be agreement if it allows the wrong narrative to dominate. When you say, this is just how my life is, you are not observing reality, you are authorizing it. Dr. Cho often taught that you should incubate the word. That means you rehearse God's promises in your mouth until they become your internal reality. Just as a mother protects a child in her womb, you protect your future in your speech. You do not expose it to negativity. You do not joke about your own defeat. You do not casually curse what you are called to carry. This is where many believers unknowingly block their own progress. They pray in faith but speak in contradiction. They worship in church but complain in private. They declare God is good with their lips, but say nothing will ever change under their breath. These mixed signals create inner confusion, and confusion always weakens momentum. Your words create direction. They tell your mind what to look for. They tell your heart what to expect. They tell your spirit what to prepare for. If you constantly speak survival language, you will live in survival mode. If you speak breakthrough language, you will begin to think and move in alignment with breakthrough. This does not mean denying problems. It means choosing perspective. Faith speech does not pretend pain does not exist. It refuses to give pain authority. It says, this is real, but it is not final. That is a highly disciplined mental practice. And discipline is what separates those who merely desire change from those who actually experience it. You must also understand that others are listening to you. Your words are teaching your own soul what is normal. If you constantly narrate failure, struggle, and weakness, your identity starts forming around those ideas. But when you speak strength, purpose, and divine order, your identity shifts. And when identity shifts, destiny follows. Silence can be powerful, but silence without truth becomes dangerous. Speak deliberately. Speak slowly if necessary. Speak with awareness. Let your mouth be a place where faith feels at home, not just a place where emotions leak out. And this is the thought to leave in your spirit. Your future doesn't just follow your prayers, it follows your words. Let's talk about obedience, because this is where faith stops being a theory and becomes a lifestyle. Many people enjoy talking about blessings, destiny, and divine favor, but obedience is the quiet discipline that actually unlocks the door. And I want you to understand this. Obedience is not about control, it is about alignment. Psychologically, obedience teaches the mind that you are not driven only by impulse, fear, or convenience. It trains your inner world to respond to truth rather than emotion. Small acts of obedience might seem insignificant at the moment, but they rewire your identity. They tell your soul, I am the kind of person who follows divine direction even when I don't fully understand it. That mindset produces stability, maturity, and spiritual authority. Many people wait for big dramatic instructions from God, thinking their breakthrough will come through one massive act of obedience. But in reality, destiny is built through small, invisible decisions done consistently. Returning the call you wanted to avoid, forgiving when you wanted to hold resentment, giving when it feels uncomfortable, walking away when your ego wants to stay. These are not emotional acts, they are disciplined acts, and discipline shapes destiny. From a philosophical point of view, obedience is surrendering your limited perspective to a higher wisdom. It is admitting that you do not see the whole picture, but you trust the one who does. That humility is not weakness. It is intellectual honesty. It is recognizing that your own mind has limits and that divine guidance is not a restriction but a protection. Here is something very important. Delayed obedience is actually disguised disobedience. When God prompts you to change a habit, adjust a relationship, or shift a pattern, timing matters. Opportunities are connected to seasons. If you postpone obedience, you may not lose God's love, but you can miss God's timing. And timing is critical in spiritual progress. You must also understand that obedience creates spiritual momentum. Every time you obey, even in small things, you gain internal confidence. Your spirit becomes stronger. Your conscience becomes clearer. Your ability to hear God becomes sharper. Obedience is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. This is where many believers struggle. They want clarity before action, but obedience often comes before clarity. God often gives you the first step, not the entire staircase. And psychologically, this is very powerful. When you move without seeing everything, you break the need for control. And the need for control is often rooted in fear. Faith does not eliminate uncertainty. It teaches you how to walk through it with trust. Small obedience carries large authority. The world celebrates loud, visible success. God rewards quiet, invisible faithfulness. When you obey in private, heaven responds in public. What no one sees, God honors. This is not religious language. This is a spiritual principle that has proven itself across generations. Let me say this very clearly. Obedience does not earn your blessing, but it makes you ready to carry it. There is a big difference. God desires to bless you, but He also desires to protect you. Many blessings that arrive too early become burdens instead of gifts. Obedience matures your character so that what you receive does not destroy you. So when you feel that quiet nudge to change, correct, adjust, or realign, do not ignore it. Do not negotiate with it. Do not delay it. That small step of obedience may be the very thing that unlocks the next season of your life. And here is the truth to walk away with. Your breakthrough is often hidden inside the step you don't want to take. Now let me speak to you about something that is rarely discussed with seriousness, yet it shapes everything around your life, the spiritual atmosphere. Because you do not live in a vacuum. You live inside environments, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual, that either accelerate or resist what God is trying to do in you. Atmosphere is simply the invisible mood of a space. You walk into a room and immediately feel tension, peace, heaviness, or clarity without anyone saying a word. That is atmosphere. And spiritually, your life operates under the same law. Your prayers are affected by the environment of your mind. Your decisions are influenced by the emotional climate of your heart. Your faith is shaped by what you consistently expose yourself to. Psychologically, the mind is highly suggestible. It absorbs tone before it analyzes words. That means the environment around you whispers to your soul before logic ever has time to argue. If you live in constant noise, conflict, fear, and negativity, your nervous system never truly rests, and a restless soul struggles to hear divine direction. Peace is not a luxury, it is a requirement for clarity. This is why prayer and fasting are not religious rituals, they are environmental reset buttons. Prayer does not inform God, it recenters you. Fasting does not punish the body. It trains your spirit to rise above appetite, impulse, and emotional dependency. These disciplines shift the atmosphere around your life. They clear mental fog. They quiet internal chaos. They create space for divine communication. Philosophically, atmosphere is the context in which consciousness operates. You cannot think deeply in a shallow environment. You cannot hear clearly in a loud room. In the same way, you cannot walk in spiritual authority while your internal world is ruled by distraction, addiction, bitterness, and constant stimulation. You may love God sincerely, but atmosphere still shapes your capacity to carry His presence. Many people pray for open doors, but live in closed spiritual climates. They ask God to speak while drowning their minds in endless noise. They desire peace while feeding their hearts with anger. This contradiction is not hypocrisy. It is unconscious self-sabotage. You cannot plant seeds of destiny in poisoned soil and expect a harvest of peace. You must curate your atmosphere deliberately. This means guarding what you listen to, what you watch, what you laugh at, and what you tolerate in your inner conversations. It means choosing relationships that sharpen you instead of drain you. It means creating moments of silence, reflection, and spiritual focus even when life feels busy. Atmosphere is not just external, it is internal. You carry a spiritual climate within you wherever you go. You can be in chaos and still carry peace if your inner world is aligned. And you can be in peace externally but live in storms internally if your mind is undisciplined. When the atmosphere is right, faith falls easily. Vision stays clear. Obedience feels natural. Words become powerful. Habits are easier to break. The environment supports the destiny. But when the atmosphere is wrong, even strong faith feels heavy. Prayer becomes tiring. Clarity disappears. Motivation weakens. This is why spiritual leaders throughout history valued solitude, silence, prayer, and discipline. Not to escape life, but to master the environment within themselves. Let me leave you with this truth because it ties everything together. You cannot carry a divine future in a polluted inner world. Clean the atmosphere and your destiny will breathe.